Hello everybody, welcome to the United Stand. I'm Mark Goldbridge and today we're discussing why Mainoo was left out of the Manchester United side for half a year and why Ruben Amorim was probably right, but why so many of us massively disagreed with him. Because I think when you look at Mainoo over the last 5 matches and compare him to people in his position, there's a huge positive, but there's also a huge hole in his game. But it's the positive why so many of us wanted him in the team. So we'll delve into that, of course. But look, first things first. Mainoo spent the first half of the season sat on the bench, basically ignored by Ruben Amorim, and it just wasn't right. However, when you look at the last few games and that midfield 3, he's a huge part of why Man United have been unbeaten for the last 5 games with 4 wins. The composure, the passing. This is the thing that for me, Manchester United have lacked all season. You've got Casemiro and his composure, I suppose, in front of the back 4 and his ability on set pieces. You've got Bruno with those Hollywood passes. But Mainoo for me is just that composure in a different way. He's that player that knits everything together. He's that possession player. He's that player that just calms things down. And if you look over the last 5 matches and his passes per 90, he's up at nearly 50 passes per 90 with a 92% pass accuracy. Now comparable to somebody like Zubimendi, that's 10 passes more per 90 with a similar pass accuracy. Elliot Anderson is 2 passes less than that with a 5% less pass accuracy. And Tonali is 8 passes less than that with an 8% less pass accuracy. So he does give very high numbers in the passing area of the game. And I think that is something that many of us felt with Mainoo and Manchester United that we needed in those first 4 or 5 months of the season, especially when you think about the amount of times we'd be winning games and then not win them. I think about Nottingham Forest away, Spurs away, West Ham at home, Bournemouth at home. And it was, funnily enough, it was Bournemouth at home where Mainoo actually got us back into the game, if you remember. But those times when we were in front in a game and we just didn't really... Bruno was never going to give you that composure on the ball because he's always going to look for the pass. He's always going to look for the risk, which means possession is lost if the risk doesn't come off. Casemiro, his job is to defend the back 4, get forward on set pieces. He's not really a player that takes the ball, passes the ball, wants it back. Whereas Mainoo, for me, has always been that different type of midfielder who, when he gets the ball, he wants it back. He's slow, he's composed, he's calm, he's meticulous. And that is fed out over the last 5 matches in that 92% pass accuracy and 50 passes per game. However, there is something quite interesting here because when you look at it, I found it unforgivable that Mainoo wasn't getting more game time. I think many a time we could have moved Bruno into one of the 10 positions, put Mainoo next to Casemiro and held on to a game better. If you think about West Ham at home, we spent a lot of the game getting in front. And then when we did get in front, we sort of sat back. Now, I don't remember whether Mainoo got any minutes in that game or not, but the common theme in the first few months of the season was that he didn't get many minutes. And I think that at times you could have took Bruno off, brought Mainoo on, and had a little bit more composure in the midfield, a little bit more possession. Under Amorim, we were averaging around 50% possession in a game, which is like, to me, it's Chuckle Vision, isn't it? Chuckle Brothers. But I think if you can push that pass accuracy, the possession up to 60%, you're limiting your opposition. And maybe in that West Ham game, Mainoo's on the pitch, you just have a little bit more control of the game, which we never really seem to have. Now look, there is a massive change when you go to 3 midfielders. If Amorim was playing with 3 midfielders, he'd have to choose between Ugarte and Mainoo, and maybe Mainoo would have played more, but he played with a midfield too. And I think, as I said, he could have left Bruno out. The interesting thing, and maybe the reason that Amorim was opposed to using Mainoo a lot. And this is interesting. Over the last 5 matches, successful defensive actions per 90, 4.3 for Mainoo, 6.7 Zubimendi, 9 Anderson, 10 Tyler Adams, and 10 Baleba. So Mainoo on the defensive output, very low. And then this as well, defensive joules per 90, Mainoo 3.2, Zubimendi 4.6, Anderson 6.3, Tyler Adams 6.9, Baleba 6.9. So his defensive output is very low, whether it's successful defensive actions or defensive duels, he scores very low. And of those defensive duels where he's very low, he only wins 55% of his defensive duels, whereas Zubimendi wins 82%, and Anderson wins 76%, Tonali wins 73%, Baleba wins 75%. So look, I'm not saying Amrim's right. I think he was wrong for the reasons I've already said. But Mainoo's defensive output is very, very low. He doesn't win a lot of his tackles and he doesn't make many tackles. He doesn't have many successful defensive actions. That is something that he doesn't do a lot of. And that's why, for me, he probably can't be a number 6. He's not that defensive-minded. However, what he does do is give you composure on the ball. And when you're playing in a midfield 3, as long as you're positioning yourself in areas that makes it difficult for people to attack, but you're good on the ball, then I think you can have a midfielder like Mainoo, certainly. I mean, look, Elliot Anderson probably plays in a similar position. Passing output similar, defensive output is a lot higher. I don't think it's necessarily a criticism of Mainoo to say that his defensive support or actions are quite low, but his big play is the passing. As we've seen, you know, when Mainoo, he's sort of like got that body swerve, hasn't he? When he's got the ball, it's that composure to play the pass, the simple pass that retains possession. When he's got the ball, it's that ability to sometimes shoot 5 or 10 metres further forward that not a lot of people can do. So in essence, we've won 4 games and drawn 1 in the last 5 matches. And whilst his defensive output is very, very low, Man United are winning games. He could have had an assist for Casemiro if Casemiro hadn't been offside. I think you can have a player like that in a midfield 3. So that is why, for me, I think over the last few weeks and months, we've seen over the last few games, Mainoo has been a success story. And he can continue to be a success story as long as he's got a 6 next to him who is pumping in the numbers that Casemiro is defensively. But that needs to be maintained. So, look, I think that it was unforgivable. I think it wasn't right. I think there were opportunities to just ignore the defensive output, which maybe Amrim didn't want to, and just go, well, look, Bruno defensively is not great. Sometimes I think Amrim should have moved Bruno into the 10, moved Mainoo in, and had a little bit more composure because it's working for Carrick. And even though it's a midfield 3, he's still not really putting the defensive numbers in, but we're retaining possession a lot better. And I think that's the Mainoo game. I think there's maybe I mean, look, there's nuance to it, isn't there? I mean, hopefully some of you didn't realise what I was just going to tell you. Hopefully some of you, I think some people just go, it's criminal that Amrim wasn't picking Mainoo, but maybe don't understand the nuance of what Mainoo is. Mainoo can't play in a 6. Mainoo can't play in a number 2 if you're going to be defensive, because that's not what his game is. Mainoo must play in a team where you want to keep possession. I don't think Amrim wanted possession. I think Amrim looked at Mainoo and went, well, his defensive output's not great, and I don't want possession. I want to move the ball quickly. And therefore, he probably didn't offer anything. However, I think that was a mistake, because I think at times we were ahead in games and we ended up giving goals up because we weren't focused on possession. And that, to me, is the quality of Mainoo. The big thing about Mainoo is his composure on the possession game and his ability to keep the ball. And when you look at the games against Man City and Arsenal and Spurs and Fulham, especially, maybe not West Ham, but especially those 4 games, there was periods of the game where we moved the ball quite nicely, where we played our way out of their press, where we kept the ball and composure. And a lot of that is fundamental to Mainoo, not Bruno, not Casemiro, but Mainoo. He is the guy that gives us that little bit extra of possession. And I think in the modern game, you do need that. And I think when you look at somebody like Zubimendi for Arsenal, he has more defensive output, but they are very similar in relation to their possession game and their ability to keep possession. So that, to me, was why Amrim made a mistake with Mainoo. But it's not an obvious one. I think you have to understand the strength of Mainoo to understand the mistake of Amrim. I don't think it necessarily was about... I don't think he picked him because I don't think he wanted possession, and I don't think he trusted him defensively. And those defensive numbers are borne out, in fact. But a little bit more possession in games where we were looking to hold on to the lead, I think he would have been invaluable. But that would have meant moving Bruno out of the team. And he didn't seem to want to do that. We are benefiting from that now with Carrick because we have the winner in Bruno, the stretcher, the risk taker. We have the composure defensively of Casemiro, and we have the ball player in Mainoo who wants to play the ball and keep the ball. And that balance works really, really well. The challenge in the summer will be to maintain that balance, because Mainoo and his defensive output is never going to work unless he's got somebody next to him who is an out-and-out ball winner as well. Get your comments in below. Let me know your thoughts. Maybe you agree, maybe you disagree, but it was a mistake in my opinion. Thanks for watching. Make sure you smash a like. I'll speak to you on the next one.